G'day guys, welcome back to VTA. On this episode we're going to look into the pulley off the 102 Senior that Dad has restored. It still needs a bit of paint when we paint the rest of the tractor, but essentially it's restored and ready to go back on the tractor. So Dad, how bad was this pulley when you got it?
Well, essentially, if you want to look at this one down here, because this is maybe an example.
Yep.
This one you can see, they're made of this compressed fibre stuff, and this one, whilst it's actually not real bad, there's an area on it that is really fallen to bits. And the one off the 102 Senior, it made this pulley look brilliant because it was just totally fallen to pieces.
You could basically put your hand through it.
Yeah, it was stuffed. You could see straight through to the splines. It was fallen to bits. So
this one is a slightly different pulley. It's off a pacemaker.
Yeah.
But they're the same
principle.
It's the same principle. The way they're assembled is basically the same.
Yeah. So the one on this one was just toast. So I couldn't use it. I don't have another pulley, and for years I've been thinking about how I could actually restore these. So on this one, I just went, I'm going to have a go at this. So knocked it all apart, got it down to its component pieces, so I could get it off the tractor. And that meant we got back to, this is off a Fordson, but it's the same principle, and you'll see some of the photos that we'll put in of that when we were doing it. There's essentially a steel hub with these splines on the outside, and then you've got the rings on the outside edge,
which you can see in these.
Which you can see on there.
Painted.
Yeah, they go there. And then within the structure,
oh, where did we put those? Oh, they're behind me here.
Yeah. Within the structure
is these. So this is wooden dowel going through here. So that would go like that. However, somewhere there. Essentially, that would go like that, and yeah, you use these dowels to go the full width of the pulley. So the dowels go all the way along here, and then you can see there's nails that go in both ends, and the nails go into the end of the dowel, and that's how you actually clamp it all together. And then once again, we'll put photos in. Dad basically, so he's used plywood to do this. So this isn't exactly as it was done originally, but this is a way of achieving essentially the same outcome with sort of modern materials. Still looks close enough to right and does the job, but basically he's used 16mm plywood, and the center one has had to be cut out to basically fit snug around these ears, and then the rest of them have all just had the hole drilled in them for the hub to go in, and then also for the dowels to go through, and then it's all been nailed back together
and glued.
And glued together, of course.
Glued it and put it in the press, and glued it and put it in the press to make it nice and solid. To be honest, I'm not sure how well this would actually work. Can't see why it wouldn't work, but it's a way of making something that looks very similar to what it would have been. And it's something I can do in my own workshop at home with materials that are readily available. And as you can see, this pulley is going to look pretty close to this one. That one there, Steve's got in front of him.
This one here is off a 25. This will actually go on the 25 project we got going in my shed at the moment. This is about as good as any original pulley I've ever seen. You don't see these fibre ones in this good a solid, like you could, it's a bit cracked, but I would happily actually put a belt on this and use it, I think. Like it is as solid as you ever see them.
That's only a bit of surface damage.
Yeah, like inside, I mean, this has this tin cover, but essentially inside and everything, I can't see why it wouldn't be as solid as anything. So, but yeah, essentially that's what we're trying to achieve with this, but I don't even know what this is made out of, and I have no doubt that this is probably the plywood is probably stronger than whatever this was anyway, especially once you use wood glue, modern wood glue and everything to hold it together. So
yeah, so and it was a case of cut the discs, cut the initial one as Steve said to go around the spokes, then cut the rest of them and drill the holes in them and put them together, and then I clamped all that together, and once that was all clamped and glued, Then I cut the outer discs and I put them on until I got to the right width. Obviously, when I first pulled it off the tractor, I measured everything I could to try and get an idea of what the dimensions were. It was still sort of hanging together, so I could get some dimensions and some measurements to get a good idea of where we wanted to be. The mistake I made on this one is I didn't make the discs that I cut big enough, and I had a little bit of difficulty machining them down without going under the size that I wanted. The other thing I'll probably do when I do future pulleys, and I'm going to do future ones because this is this one we got in parts here. If I had a pulley, I'd put it on our F model Fords, and I don't have a pulley, but after doing this one, I think I got enough information. I reckon I could make one of those. But what I would do now is probably go out and get the ply discs cut. I know there's places that can laser cut these discs in nothing flat. I could get 10 discs cut and just have to come home and do the hand stuff myself, probably for not a lot more than the cost of the material, to be honest. Especially for simple discs. So yeah, clamped it all together, then machined the inside so as I could fit the end plates, because the end plates curve down inside.
And when he says machined,
yep.
This is a shaft that the pulley would run on in a tractor. This one just came off a 44, an old wreck that we had. And so basically Dad's cut it out, but the back end of the tractor was knackered, like we weren't using it for anything.
Chop the gear off the end.
Chop the gear off the end, and you can mount that in the lathe, put the spline straight on that, and that way we know it's running true.
Yeah.
And then we machine it in the lathe like you would anything else. And yeah, it now, because we did this, essentially we know it's going to run true. If we didn't do this,
I'd have had to make an arbor.
Yeah, we'd have to make something, but also like you'd have to, because this is all cast and stuff, if we had to just clamp the lathe onto the center of the hub and not the actual machine spline, it has the opportunity to be off center slightly, which obviously you don't want when you run on the belt, because then the belt would go tight and loose, which is obviously terrible. So yeah, this was just a really simple way that we could clamp it into the vise, and we knew we were centered, and as long as everything revolved around this shaft, we know we're going to be straight and true. So so that was how we held it in the vise. Yeah. In the vise, I should say, in the lathe.
And then once it was all clamped together, and I machined the inside so as I could fit these plates on, and that allowed me to mark where these nails go. Then once I marked where all the nails go, I put it in the drill press and I drilled 16mm holes all the way through, in between where the actual spoke, the metal spokes are in there, because obviously I couldn't go through them. And then I glued, I used 16mm dowel, glued it and pushed it into the holes and let it all set. And then put these end plates on and put screws in temporarily, then just to hold these end plates. So I put screws in here, then I put it on the mandrel in the lathe, and I machined the outside. And I tried to put a slight rise in the center. It's got like a degrees taper here and a taper here to get a slight rise in the center like the pulleys normally have. I have no idea if that's actually enough. I probably would have liked to put a bit more, but because I'd made the discs a bit small, I sort of got stuck on that. So the truth is, we're probably rarely, if ever, going to run anything off the belt on this tractor. So this one is probably more for looks, I think, although I'm pretty sure it would work. The next one, I'm hoping to make a few more of these. It's not that hard, and I think so many of these pulleys are just destroyed. There's no option. So,
but a lot of tractors are around with the carcasses still on there, you know, because people don't know, either they're not willing to have a go, or I mean, in the past we haven't had a go either. You know, this is sort of our first attempt. But now that we know we do it, it's one of those things that it's really not a drawback to a tractor at all. Like we'd make a pulley, you know, we'd happily make up another pulley in a heartbeat, you know. Yeah,
it took me about, including cutting the discs out, it probably took me 8 or 10 hours labour to actually do this. So,
but in the grand scheme of things, like, I mean, a restoration, I mean, that doesn't even include paint. I'm just talking our mechanical restorations. It takes us over a year to do a tractor. So 8 to 10 hours in the workshop, you know, that's a few weeks work really. Like we only get in the workshop a couple of hours a week. So, you know, a few nights in the workshop and you've got a completely restored, usable belt pulley.
And the final part of the process was that once I'd had the inside done, the discs fitted, I actually put the nails back in. So I took the screws out, and I hammered the nails, and I put some glue on the nails and hammered the nails all back in place of the screws. Then I masked up the surface and undercoated the rest, so we'll paint that. That'll be red one day when we finish the tractor. Once I had the undercoat, I took the masking off, put it in the lathe, and I used just some satin clear finish that I had, and just sanded it lightly, did some satin clear, let it dry, sand it. I did about 6 or 7 coats, I think, from memory, to get it to look reasonably decent, and to seal it from the weather, because I want to make sure no moisture or anything gets in there. So 6 or 7 coats of clear, and that's what it looks like. So,
which, I mean, I don't know. I imagine when they're new from the factory, they'll probably just paint it, to be honest, because the whole tractor would have just got a coat of red. That's just how they were. But we think it looks good with the exposed timber and stuff on there. So obviously, when it was getting used, it wouldn't have taken long to burn the paint off anyway. So I think it looks good the way it is. Yeah, so we're really happy with it. So
hope this video and the article we've written in the Tom magazine is actually useful for people. I hope if you're happy to have a go at it, see if you can make some pulleys instead of having to throw all you need is the metal parts, and away you go.
Yeah, so as Dad said, he has written an article for the Tom magazine. I can't remember what issue it is off the top of my head. I will put that down the bottom in some text. I've got it written down somewhere. So yeah, you can check it out in the Tom magazine. They're possibly going to put a bit of a video on their YouTube channel as well. So you can head over and give them a like and subscribe and all that stuff. And yeah, so hope you've enjoyed the video. We'll see you next time. Like, subscribe, all that sort of stuff, and we'll catch you later.